Welcome to Awakening Mindfulness at Work, a conversation that matters. I'm Pierre Khawand.
And I'm Sarah Killeen. We are bringing to you conversations and practices to cultivate presence, calm, and balance in the workplace.
Welcome back to Awakening Mindfulness at Work. Today, I would like to explore something very practical with Sarah and also very human. It's the idea that doing the most difficult first can be enriching, can help us overcome obstacles. So it doesn't mean the biggest thing. It doesn't necessarily mean the most urgent thing, but the thing that we may be resisting, the thing that we kind of keep moving away from. We could keep moving from one to-do list to the other, or from one calendar time slot to another. That thing that brings us maybe fear or anxiety or maybe discomfort. I've been actually, I think I mentioned that before, Sarah, I've been experimenting with this actually for some times, and I really believe it can do wonders. And that's why I wanted us to kind of chat about it some more and see if we can decipher it and get some more insights from it. And even the simple act of identifying the difficult thing, and just having the simple intention of tackling it, I think that can shift something within us. It's almost like sending a message internally that, okay, we're not running away. We are here. We intend to handle it. So before I go into some more observations, your first impressions or thoughts, anything that came up for you?
Yes, big topic, confronting topic as well. I think we're right in the core of avoidance. We can talk a lot about that as well. I think those two are very, very linked. Avoidance is a huge one. So I look forward to us, exchanging insights and
Yeah.
ideas. Um, yeah, I think it relates also to a lot of the frameworks we are working with when it comes to working with intention.
Mhm.
So building more intentionality in the workplace and um, kind of empowering ourselves to choose what we're working on moment by moment. So instead of letting ourselves be run by typically patterns of avoidance,
Mhm.
sometimes
Mhm.
we can choose to have different systems guiding us in terms of what we do when. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
good
yeah, yeah,
good topic.
yeah, yeah. Avoidance. That's exactly what we're trying to overcome here.
And
Yeah.
avoidance can go from just being a behavior to being a state, actually. After it's
Mm.
been a pattern, and I think
Mhm.
it's something
Mhm.
I've noticed. Also, I've noticed in myself, depending on, at certain times in my working life, when avoidance as a pattern gets more ingrained, it turns into who I am.
Mhm.
Actually, I mean,
Mhm.
it's very somatic as well. It's what is familiar. So, you tend to, even if in your head you know that maybe you should do things a little bit differently for your own sake, you
Mhm.
tend to move in a familiar way. So you go towards what's more
Yeah.
comfortable and what's more familiar, and then it becomes more and more automatic until it's just how you show up and how you move through the workday and life in general.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. And I think sometimes we think like doing the most difficult means forcing ourselves or pushing harshly. And that's what keeps us maybe avoiding more. But actually what we're talking about here is much more about gently turning towards what's difficult and doing this, like you said, Sarah, with intention and with awareness. So often the difficult task is not just difficult because of the task itself, it's difficult because of what it brings inside of us, things like fear of failure, fear of conflict, maybe fear of not knowing enough or not being enough, and of course self-judgment and judgment by others. So it's not as much about the task itself. Yeah,
Mm.
even though
I
sometimes it
think it,
could be. Yeah, go ahead.
no, I meant that's a great point. And also, we don't very often, we forget to, take into the equation the fact that tackling, doing that difficult thing first or doing it at all would actually lower all those feelings in the background, because it doesn't feel good to keep postponing it as well. Because even if we are not doing it, it's still there in the back of our minds, right? Even if we're not doing it, we're not actually putting ourselves through the difficult thing. There are those difficult sensations, difficult thoughts and feelings in our mind, and it stays there. So
That's
actually,
a great
going
point.
to
Yeah.
going to those tasks, actually, there is a very, I said, maybe the difficulty of the task might be completely offset and maybe completely overpowered by the satisfaction and the relief and the goodness, the good feelings of actually doing this instead of having them there in the
Yeah.
back of the mind, kind of nagging you.
Yeah, I think you just pointed out something really, really deep and a great insight, which is okay. So we avoid the difficult task, but the difficult feelings about the task, the guilt, the resentment that we have to do this task, the just the big thing, oh my god, I have to do that task. So those feelings, even though we're not doing it, those feelings are there. So by not doing the difficult task, we're actually prolonging the suffering for more and longer and longer. So
And they just
so
get bigger. I think those
yeah,
feelings, they don't just stay there. They actually, it's like we're feeding them every time we're
yeah,
thinking about it and not
yeah,
doing anything about it. We're feeding them and they grow bigger and bigger.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so whether we do it or not, whether we do the difficult task or not, the difficulty is there and it's gonna get longer. So why not do it?
Mm.
And by doing it, what we're actually doing is we are getting real data on what is this about, what's the difficulty about, and instead of living in resistance in our mind imagining how horrible this will be, then we get to see the real thing. And is it bad? How bad is it? What is it? It's a whole different
Mm.
experience.
I think it's a great example of um, something we teach often when it comes to the emotional side and the practical side, right? When we are
Mm.
facing something that is difficult, whether it's a situation, it's a task, it's a person, first dealing with with kind of the emotional charge in the situation.
Mhm.
So in that sense, maybe it's not the task, it's the relationship with the task. It's what is difficult right now. There might be boredom, there might be restlessness, there might be fear, there might be anger, like you said, or resentment, or shame, or so dealing with that first. And then when we have a better understanding of why we're feeling that way and what's standing in the way of us doing that thing in the first place, when we have that better understanding, then we can go into the practical side, which is to
Mhm.
tackle the task or to have that conversation with the person, or to plan that task, or to do that first step. So you know coming from a place of better understanding, more calm, more steadiness, more grounding,
Mhm.
so that we know what we're working with. um,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a very nice distinction between the emotional part and the real practical aspects of the task. So the emotional part, I even might describe it that before we even begin to work on the difficult task, there is an emotional aspect that needs to be addressed, almost like an emotional cleanup. Like what's going on here? What are all these emotions? and making room for them. I know we've practiced the rain practice and many similar practices in our mindfulness kind of work, and the idea is to make room for what's there. Like, okay, fear is here, resistance is here, or tightness is here, or the belief that I can't do this is here. And that's okay. It's okay for those to be here, just making room for them, and adding that
Mm.
kindness and compassion, and then being ready to begin.
Mm. And by doing that, we're teaching ourselves to make things less difficult, to put things in perspective as well. So we are teaching ourselves to, rewire as well our brains and
Mm,
do things differently. In the situation where we're really overwhelmed by a task because we're actually afraid and ashamed that we might not have the skills to do that task. Once we've actually understood that it's about fear and maybe shame, and there might be skills that are missing, then we can make a concrete plan of, okay, you know, I'll I'll acquire those skills. So I'll do that practice,
mhm,
I'll do that research, and we can have a concrete plan so that then when we get into the task, um, things are less charged, right? Because we have a plan
mhm.
and we know why it seemed difficult in the first place, but it's not
Yeah,
as difficult anymore. We're taming the difficulty. We're taming
yeah,
our difficult feelings
yeah.
and thoughts, and
And
very often the thoughts are they're it's old thoughts as well, right? It's a lot of unhelpful beliefs as well. Very often it's not even true beliefs, or it's
yeah,
old patterns.
yeah. I like calling them old. Like they're old and they're old, and then we keep dragging them, and they almost are bored from us. Like, leave me alone, but we keep dragging them. So yeah, and this is where it came to mind, is something about how do we get started once we did the emotional cleanup, let's call it. How do we get started? This brings back the episode we had recently, which is about working in iterations, which means like just pause. After we pause, we make room for what's going on inside, we calm down, and then just looking at what could be a first iteration. What can I design to be my first iteration? Not how can I solve this whole thing? How can I finish? How can I make it perfect? But what can I do? What would be a first real meaningful step? And putting that container again, this is also a little refresher from our other episode, putting a little container about it so it doesn't feel like we're stuck there forever. So
Mm,
that could be a time container. I'm going to work on this for the next 30 minutes or an hour,
mm.
or I'm going to just do the first 3 steps, or I'm going to just draft a very messy first draft, whatever the container might be.
Yes, and I think that's very linked to expectations as well. And there's a lot of talk around setting expectations, right, with other people, with different stakeholders. And I think it's very important to talk about setting the right expectations with ourselves as well. Very often we can be our biggest critics, and the inner critic can be really loud. And
Mhm.
sometimes when a task, when we label something as a difficult task, or we don't get started, or we just push it away, push it in the back until we feel like we're ready, or until we feel like we can do it good well enough. And it stays like that because those expectations we have for
Mhm.
ourselves
Mhm.
might not be realistic, or it's not even about being realistic, they are not helpful in the moment to get us started.
Mhm.
And that is
Mhm.
linked to a lot of other, like we said, a lot of other beliefs around being good enough, or what is good
Mhm.
enough, and what am I
Mhm.
expecting of myself. But this setting expectations with ourselves, that's a really important one as well. The right expectations with ourselves, with the
Mhm.
kindness
Mhm.
and the compassion that
Yeah.
we are preaching here.
Yeah, the softer expectations as opposed to the rigid, this is what's expected, and if I deviate from it, I'm not doing a good job, I'm not a good person. So the softer expectations, more
Mm,
like intentions, and yeah, more like intentions to accomplish certain things.
And linking it back to the science of the growth mindset that we talk about often,
Mm-hmm.
having softer expectations in that sense, that's the foundation for growth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being able to try and fail and try again and fail, or not do things perfectly, that is how we grow. And by definition,
Mm-hmm.
how we thrive. We grow and we expand, and that's the foundation of growth mindset. So it's been, yeah, it's actually, it's not just the topic of productivity, of doing something in the workplace. We go into actually topics, in the world of personal development and growth,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, really really growing as an individual as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So kind of looking at the different, dissecting this idea of approaching the difficult task into smaller steps. It sounded like first they need to be a step where we make the intention that I want to tackle this for the bigger
Mm,
good, for myself and for the purpose that this task can serve. And then it's that emotional review, assessment, and clean up and making room for those emotions to play, and adding that kindness, and then going into the practical aspect of designing that first step or first iteration. And then as we start to do it, things start to get better, because now we stepped outside the resistance, and now we're into the real world. Now we're getting real data. We're in touch with what's actually present, as opposed to in our mind creating those big deal. And then I'm going to cover one more thing. When we're done with that first iteration, I mean, that is a transformation, because now we set a precedence for ourselves that we can tackle this, we can do this, and that is how self-confidence develops. Self-confidence isn't about having it and then acting. It's more about acting and then finding it anyway. So yeah, I think that progression can be quite powerful,
mm,
and the result can be really really amazing, and how
mm,
can help us move forward.
mm. I love that last step. I was thinking about it actually. This, self confidence is grown, grows with the trying, grows with the doing, and savoring that when it happens. That's a word we've been talking
Hmm.
about a few times, right? Savoring. The pride, whether it's, it's tiny or it's huge, the appreciation for the fact that we did something differently, and it might be the start of a completely new pattern, and letting that grow in us, that sense of appreciation for what we can do. So yeah, and maybe reflecting as well, going back, looking at those different steps and reflecting on what went well, what didn't work so well, so what could I do better
Hmm.
next time, so kind of taking
Hmm.
those
Hmm.
lessons. So yeah, taking those
Yeah.
lessons for the next difficult endeavor. So yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much for this topic. I think. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, nice to expand on it. And I think in conclusion, I'll mention a couple of things. First, sometimes we need support, and doing the difficult things may also mean not doing it alone. It may be having that conversation with someone, and maybe getting some feedback, some encouragement, reaching out to people who are encouraging and motivating, and getting a little bit of that from them. So that's why community and relationships are part of how we can move through those difficulties. And then the last thing I want to mention is, this saying that I came across, which says, only do what's easy and life gets hard. Do what's hard and life gets easy. Yeah. So anything, Sarah, to
Right on.
close
No, I
our
think that was the
conversation?
the perfect saying to wrap up. Thank you, Pierre, for sharing.